We're doing a show today.
Okay.
We have a little bit of time. I finally got you to, you're finally ending up in Arizona. So I wanted to get you on this show because I felt in my heart that it was that important. Looking beyond the fact that you're my best friend forever.
You're mine.
Looking beyond the fact that we work together and we're part of the same team. I wanted to share your story with society.
Okay.
Because I felt, and I kind of wanted to not joke around so much, and I wanted to be very serious about this because I feel intensely about the fact that your story can be powerful for someone who hears it.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Did I make you feel weird right there?
No. I mean, I love joking with you, but I feel like
I mean, that part's impossible. We'll probably joke.
I love our jokes, but sure, I'd love to share my story. I don't often share it, so this could be cool.
Well, it's a powerful story, and I think it's a testament to like how quickly things can evolve if you like basically work your pecs off. You work your pecs off and make shit happen. And I think that you're like, you know, we're just gonna get started right now. Here's the thing. This is my buddy Doug Theo. And I'm gonna give you the lowdown, and then I'll start asking him questions. Some of them might be weird because I wrote them down last night. I had a little bit of wine.
Perfect.
So Doug came out of nowhere as I was trying to figure out my life and entering the area of like Butterfly Circus and Pulp Riot. And for those of you that don't know, the Butterfly Circus was the first independent education crew that started making a lot of noise and you know made it a ticketed event and really popped off creators David and Alexis Thurston. And they saw on social media something that was super rad in the fact that like people wanted to know what these artists were doing, but the major brands were not paying attention to these artists because they weren't the top 3 artists that such and such brands had. So they focused on social media and the people that had a lot of eyes on them and gave them a platform to share how they did things. And they based it basically around Instagram. And everybody had 30 minutes at a time rather than like 4 hours of just droning on and on of like a dictator type education. And people really bought into it. Attendees really bought into it. People loved the 30 minutes and they loved the 5 different vibes as far as like balayage or cutting or barbering or whatever it was. So it created quite a buzz in the industry. So I was doing that, and then out of nowhere, I started getting contacted by what came to be my very best friend, Doug. And I mean, I think that's a good segue because I mean, let's just start from the beginning. Who are you?
So my name's Doug Theo Harris. I am currently the Director of Education for Pulp Riot. That's who I am.
But you weren't always the Director of Education for Pulp Riot.
No. It's been pretty recent. I think it's been since about April of last year. That was when, maybe a little after that. So it's been a short, wild ride so far, but it's been pretty amazing.
Well, it's funny because you say short, wild ride. So I think that kind of like, that's your mentality is that's been a short ride. But like, if you really think about it, because I remember when things were really kind of getting crazy, you essentially ended up places working for free and doing things for free and just like fucking being there and being there and being there.
Sure.
And like never letting up. And, you know, in a world of, you know, what seems to be instant gratification, if people aren't, you know, getting a huge check immediately, they talk a lot of shit and then bow out.
Yeah.
But you never did that.
No. No, I mean, I think that's probably like one of the most important things that you can do when you want to be involved with something is to be there, right? You have to show up. You have to be willing to sacrifice things in order to be a part of something that's bigger than you are, or even just something that you selfishly want to be a part of, right? Like if you want to be a part of it, you're gonna have to sacrifice and do what it takes to get yourself, in the position to be a part of something that you want to be a part of,
Right.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your beginning. I know, like, salon owner. Like, I know all of this because we talk about it during sleepovers. But not everybody else knows necessarily. So let's start from the beginning.
Okay. So I grew up in Maryland, like in a suburb of Washington D.C. Played sports when I was young. Sort of like made my way through high school. Wasn't really my thing. Did a little bit of college. Again, wasn't really my thing. So I stopped going to college and became a bartender. So I was like bartending and waiting tables and managing this restaurant. And the real like beginning of me being inspired to do hair or wanting to do hair was that I saw this guy came into my bar. He had a really cool haircut, and I was like, "Hey man, where'd you get that haircut?" He said, "Oh, I got it down the street at this place called HUGE Salon." So I'm like, all right, cool. So the next day, call that place, get an appointment with the guy that cut his hair. That guy's name's Aaron Claxton. He was known as AC at the time. Why is that funny?
Because I think I know where this story is going, and doesn't he turn out to be a douchebag?
I wouldn't. No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Not that. No.
Because I was laughing at the fact that you gave his full name and possibly leading into his address, and then we were going to talk about how he was a douche.
No. AC's not a douche at all. He's a pretty good dude. Yeah. So anyway, so I go and get my hair cut by him, and he was, again, he was cool. He was young. He was straight, which, I think I had like the wrong impression, I guess, of male hairdressers at the time. That like in order to be a male hairdresser, you were most likely gay. So not that there's anything wrong with that, but I had like the wrong impression, right?
Right.
So he was in a band. He was involved in music, and he just seemed like a cool guy, right? So I thought to myself after I left, that's something that maybe I could see myself doing. Like, that guy's having a really good time. He loves his job. He gets to talk, and I always enjoyed talking to people and stuff like that. So yeah, the more and more I went in, it just seemed like something that I might want to try, Mm-hmm. So he got me a job there, and I wasn't actually allowed to work at that salon. I had to work at their partner salon. There was a second location because him and I had sort of become friends, and they didn't want us to be actually working together just because we probably would have distracted each other from what we both needed to do, right?
Wow. Do you still think about him now that you and I are friends?
I don't necessarily know if I think about him the way I think about you. But he's a very successful salon owner now. He owns a shop in DC called The Shop Salon. He's got two locations, wife, kids. He's still pushing the envelope with being a stylist himself, and he'll come back around in the story in a minute. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. So from there, I got a job working at the partner salon, right? And is this what you want me to go into, like how I met Stevie and everything as well? Because all of that stuff happens right.
This is the part that I like.
Right here. Okay,
yeah.
so I go into the other salon, and actually the first time I was supposed to have an interview there, I had the interview, was supposed to start the following Saturday, but then couldn't get off from my current job at the bar, so I no-showed the salon.
No,
I didn't go in.
You didn't no-show the bar. You no-showed the salon.
Yeah, because I had like deep roots at this bar. They were like family. They had really I had worked hard for them, and they had been really, really great to me over the few years that I worked there. Okay. So I felt terrible like no-showing the bar. I had to open the restaurant, right?
Right.
So I couldn't get anybody to cover my shift. So I ended up no-showing the first time I was supposed to go to my first day at the salon.
Did you say that you had it like? Did you? And here's what I would have did. I would have said, "Oh, I must have had the wrong date."
I mean, that's smart. I wasn't that crafty, and still I'm not very crafty when it comes to those types of things. Ask my wife; she can tell.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So I think maybe a couple of weeks passed, and I called and I was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Like, I'd really love another opportunity." So they're like, "All right, whatever, you can come back." But prior to that, when I first walked in the door for my interview, I mean, I can remember the outfit I had on. That's how like important this day was. But so I go up to the desk and I see this girl behind the desk, and she's got like dreadlock pigtails and these like tiny baby bangs, and she's wearing this little skirt and the socks pulled up to her knees, and I'm just like, holy crap, this girl is incredible. Like, where am I gonna ever find a girl like this? And then so we're like, hi, I'm Doug, whatever, we meet, and she's like, hey, this is my husband, and he's gonna interview you. So I'm like, oh fuck, you know. So anyway, turns out she's Hugo's daughter. She's married. Whatever. We were friends, right? So she managed the salon, and after I missed that first Saturday, I got to come back. I had another chance, so I assisted there at that salon for quite some time.
Right.
I assisted pretty much everybody that worked there, and that was how I really got like my feet wet, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a cool salon. I mean, one of the owners was a 5-time NAHA finalist. They were very deeply indebted in Sassoon education, you know. So I got a really fantastic upbringing when it came to like just my core values of like how to do hair, right? Mm-hmm. So if it was just a really great place to start. There was a lot of really incredible hairdressers that worked there and that were open enough to guide me in the right direction.
Okay.
But from there, I'm like, I don't know what it was, whether it was my
wit and charm.
Yeah, but I just decided I wanted to go to hair school also. So I had worked there for about a year, assisting and stuff, and I didn't have the best relationship with like one specific person there, and this person definitely weighed a lot on like my future at that salon, right? Okay. So we didn't get along very well. I don't know if it was just a lack of respect for one another or whatever. I don't want to get too into that because.
Well, I can. That was the douche.
No. This was not.
Man,
this was not.
Fuck.
No. No, I don't know if I'm going to talk about the douche. That's a little aggressive, you know. I don't.
We can be a little aggressive. Unlike, you know, we gotta be careful at the show later on tonight. We can be a little more aggressive today. Okay. But we don't have to go that route.
No, it was a woman who was the boss's wife.
Okay.
She was that 5-time NAHA nominated hairdresser who I think was just a little old school. You know, like she started doing hair in the late 80s, early 90s, and she just had a different like view on how she treated the people around her, the people that worked for her. And I think that really ran rampant for a long time in the industry. Like you treated assistants like they were pieces of shit, right? Yeah. You walked on them, you made them work like, not that you shouldn't work hard, but you definitely would like take it out on them, and
like a hazing process.
Yeah. And I personally have mentored quite a few hairdressers and never treated a single hairdresser like that.
Right.
And they're fantastic hairdressers. They're successful. They do really well, and they didn't need to be like treated that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that era.
Yeah.
I mean, it still happens a little bit.
I'm sure it does.
There was some sort of in those people's mind a like hazing that the younger generation had to go through. Mm-hmm. And I totally get that, but I feel the same as you. Like it doesn't to get the most out of somebody. It doesn't always mean.
Yeah. Hey, look, if they're not working hard enough that you feel like you need to be hazing them, then they're probably not the right assistant for you, right?
Anyways.
Yeah, like that's not like the path that they should take. Right. I don't think, or that you should even try to guide them through, right? Like they should be working hard enough that you don't feel the need to make them feel a certain way, other than positive, right?
Well, and if that's like a thing that you get joy out of, as far as like, then we need to look into that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like you need some fucking help if that's what makes you feel good throughout the day. Like there's a problem there.
Yeah.
I had one of those too.
Yeah. I mean, in the future, after realizing like who she was as a hairdresser, later on, I was really able to like connect with her, right? Like we definitely, I wouldn't necessarily say that she changed that much, but like I understood more about who she was as a person, as a hairdresser, and I definitely learned a lot from her. Like I don't want to take anything away from like what I got from her, because she was a pretty baller hairdresser. Like she was always busy, always booked, and then still found
Never smiling.
I mean, she still found time to do these shoots for Naha and make this part of like what she wanted to sort of achieve. And obviously, you know, people have things going on in their life that cause them to be a certain way and act a certain way, and so. But yeah, I think that there was just, I had already like managed a restaurant and done these things, and like I feel like even at a young age, I sort of had a hard time with people that didn't respect me, you know? And so I didn't necessarily respect her too much.
Right.
So I decided after a year or so that I was going to go to hair school, and that was how I was going to get my license. So I left. I went to hair school.
So you had two options. You could go to hair school and get your license, or you could apprentice and earn your license that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's like the laws in Maryland.
Yeah, we didn't have that in Arizona, or I don't know if we had that on the West Coast or not, but that's cool.
So in Maryland you can get a secondary license. Like after you've had your license for a certain amount of time, you can go back and take another test to get your senior license, and then if you get your senior license, you can basically like hold an assistant, right? So you can give an assistant hours through the state board.
Okay.
So yeah, if you do school, it's 1,500 hours, and then I think the apprenticeship license is longer. I think it's like 2,000 hours or something like that. I could be wrong. There might not be any discrepancy in the hours, but I feel like you could go to school for a year and be done, or you could apprentice for like 2 years and be done, is what it sort of seemed like.
Would you probably end up apprenticing a little bit afterwards anyways, though?
I mean, if you wanted to work at a certain salon or a good salon in the area, then yeah, you would definitely apprentice longer. So by me stopping my apprenticeship and starting hair school, I was basically kind of starting over, right? Because those hours from being an apprentice didn't apply to hair school. So I left. I went to hair school, and hair school was cool. You know, I would say that like I had some really great experiences there. You know, I like good friends and had a lot of fun. I wouldn't necessarily say that it was like the best platform to like, you know, learn anything. Right. Like I don't do anything today that I learned in hair school.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if you asked me to wrap a perm or do some finger waves or something like that, I could probably like think back to hair school and give it a shot. But I don't know. I mean, you're the jam at finger waves. I've definitely seen you knock those out before.
My finger wave incident, we'll call it, will go down in history as the most embarrassing moments of my life, because I wouldn't give up. I kept trying like a dumbass.
Was that on stage that you kept trying, or were?
No, thankfully it wasn't on stage that I kept trying. It was always like a pre-done thing. But we'd have to talk to Mallory more about the finger wave situation, because I feel like the first time I did it like came out real good. It was like buttery smooth, and then the next 165 times I tried it, it gradually and then really quickly got worse and worse and worse. And it was awful. Just a quick story, but we were at ABS Chicago, and I was doing Mallory's finger waves to prep, and like it wasn't working. I needed a dryer. Finally, kind of got them somewhat to where they were close to looking good, and I needed a dryer. So I walked out. We didn't have a dryer, obviously, in the prep room. So I went out, and I like the first area that I saw, I just like blasted it open. I was like, "We need to dry." And this guy was like, "Right over here. Come over and help us out." And I looked in, and it was the area. It was the JCPenney's like OG crew, like every fucking one of the artists in there were doing finger waves. And I was like, oh, like I looked right over, and like there's a woman teaching finger waves, and like I've never felt so tiny in my life. Like I shrunk.
Tiny
and
fingers.
she was like, you want to get that under the dryer. Not those, that. She was like right over there. And I've never been so embarrassed in my life, man, because they were like, it was the room with the most baller finger waves I've ever seen. And all of a sudden it was like a nightmare, like beautiful finger waves everywhere. And then my finger waves had to like go through, like walk through, me and Mallory had to walk through all these beautiful finger waves just to get to the dryer. And everybody was like,
Yeah, shaking their head.
yeah. I wanted to sit down for the class that the lady was doing, but
Wait, I have a model for your class.
yeah. Just real quick, if you could.
Yeah.
If you could guide my hands.
Yeah. Show me.
So yeah, that was we got off track, but that was my finger wave incident.
Yeah.
So I heard you say Maryland.
Yeah, so
Originally from Maryland, and then
that's all you've heard so far?
yeah, I heard
I
you
said that
say
a long time ago.
Well, I heard you say Maryland, and I kind of wanted to go off of Maryland, which brings me to Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase.
You lived in an area called Chevy Chase.
I didn't live in Chevy Chase. I lived
You lived close to an area of Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting for people to know that there's an area in Maryland called Chevy Chase that actually has nothing to do with Chevy Chase.
Nothing at all.
And in trying to get more information on that, I could never come up with anything.
No, it'll tell you that like when Chevy Chase was established, and it was long before Chevy Chase was born. Established, yeah. Exactly.
So how about that girl with the dreadlocks
Yeah, so
and the bangs and the socks?
okay, so you want to jump to that, because I did like 15 years of hairdressing before any of that stuff.
Okay, let's go back then. Let's go back. Let's work our way up to the.
Because there's some stuff that led into I think education in a way back then. So
Talk to me.
okay, so finished hair school. Ended up actually going back to that same salon because I felt comfortable there, right? I had interviews at a few other places, and I just didn't quite feel the same. So we're talking like late '90s, early 2000, and I was definitely a little different than I think I am now. Anyway, I remember walking into this one place. I had cowboy boots and these tight ass jeans and like my shirt half open, and I go walking in. And like faux hawk mullet, like full on.
Bro, you wore cowboy boots?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I'm down. I didn't know.
Yeah, pointy-toed cowboy boots with the clunky heels.
Yeah.
So I remember going into this one place that was like kind of fancy, and they like brought me up this like go up the elevator, and then you like walk out onto the cutting floor. And I swear I walked out onto the floor, and it was like, with the boots on. Yeah. The whole room was like. Everybody stopped. The chairs turned. Every stylist in there that was like, wearing all black and all done and everything turned. They turned their chairs. Everybody looks at me, and I was like,
they even turned the chairs. To
it's like, look at this guy. So I just didn't feel very comfortable. And that girl and her ex-husband had actually come into my hair school about 2 or 3 months prior to me graduating, and they were like, oh yeah, you should come back. You should come back and work at the salon when you're done with school. Like once you have your license, you'll be like on a better path to getting on the floor and all this stuff. So I'm like, I considered it, and then ended up that was definitely like the place I wanted to go back to. Mm-hmm. So I went back there, assisted a little bit more, just like you were saying. If you want to work at the right place, you got to sort of assist a bit more. So I assisted for a little while, got some great guidance from a lot of the stylists there, and then that was where I started my career. And it was lucky because right when I went on the floor, we moved from like one location that was kind of small to another location that was like twice the size. It was all brand new, different major roads. So there was just like tons of new clients that were coming in. Mm-hmm. So I was really lucky in the beginning that transition happened. So my book grew very quickly. Mm-hmm. I think quite a bit faster than most people when they start in a salon. It just because of the influx of new clients. And right. I was always, I mean, and my wife will even say this now, like, but part of the thing that appealed to that salon at the time was that I did work hard. Like I was available when they needed me, I would take whatever client walked in the door. Like, I never said no. I always stayed late. I always would just do whatever it took to sort of like help my book grow, right? If I'm sitting there doing a haircut and they're like, hey, we've got a color here, maybe somebody can finish your blow dry. I was like never too proud to like not finish the blow dry, right? I would just like give the confidence into the next person to help finish my blow dry, so I could add that extra ticket, just because, you know, I thought it was important to grow quickly, right?
Right. And that's I mean, that's been your mantra throughout. Like, that's it's to me, it's like so simple. Like something like that, just from the beginning in building a clientele, all the way into like where you've ended up now. It's all because of that. Yeah. And continuing and pushing and, you know, just taking that extra time, you know, going the extra mile. Yeah. And that's what's continued to elevate you throughout your entire career.
Well, I think this is like a little side note for stylists out there. And, you know, I would assume that there's quite a few people that don't agree with me, but I think that there's things that you do to your clients that are very important, right? And then there's other things that you do for your clients that, like, you can put confidence in the people around you to help you out with, right? Like, the entire time I was a hairdresser, when I started being able to double book, right? I would always do everything that had to do with the scissors, and I would always do everything that had to do with bleach, right? But a color application or a blow dry is something that you can put confidence in your assistants or the other hairdressers around you to be able to help you with, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not putting enough effort or taking care of your client enough. It just means that the times that you are taking care of your client, that's the important time, right? That's when you spend the right time with them, you treat them right, you do what you have to do. But then letting them know that there's other people around that you have confidence in, that they can also be taken care of by, it just turns the entire salon, I think, and the people around you into more of a family. Right. When my clients walk in and they say hi to my assistant and they're excited about my assistant's shampoo and what the assistant's going to do with their blow dry today, that really speaks to me, right? Like, I'm really happy for my client that they can have faith in somebody else, and then also for my assistant that they get that moment with the client, right? Yeah. Right. So that was always, like, I think really helped me grow was being aware of when to put that 100% effort into your client and when to step back. Right. You know?
I think that's great because everybody that I've mentored that has like gone onto the floor, this always comes up. So this is I hope people were listening to that aspect of that, because the question always comes up as to like, how do I work with this new assistant that I have? You know, what do I do moving forward? How do I make sure that my client knows that they're still receiving all of my attention? You know, so keeping that relationship with the client, helping your assistant build confidence and you know, skill level and everything that they're doing and moving forward. That question always seems to come up. But I mean, I liked what you said about everything with scissors and everything with bleach. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And then getting the assistant to a point where they can handle just about everything else.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I mean, even just like doing something as little as like walking by and letting that client know that you are watching that assistant by saying something to the assistant, right? Like, oh, I love what you're doing right there. That looks really great. Yeah. Instill the confidence, right? And then if they're doing something wrong, be like, hey, let me show you this real fast. Right. Grab the blow dry and the brush, show them this little thing that you need to show them. It lets the client know that you're paying attention, right? And that you still want the best for them. So there's just really, really great ways to grow your clientele, and then also, you know, help your assistants or help the people around you also grow, right? So anyway,
good call. Yeah, good call.
So I don't know where we were. So I worked in the salon, right? I was never really interested in education until Bumble and Bumble had a program called the Network Educator Program, and our rep for Bumble at the time came in. She talked about the program, and she said, you know, why don't you guys pick a couple people and see if, you know, we'll like choose people from your salon to be this network educator. And you got this great opportunity. You got to go up to New York. I mean, you had to pay your way up there and stuff like that. You had to. I took the train, and you get the hotel, and they give you this like 4-day experience, right, where you learn about all their products, you learn a couple little styling things, and then they kind of help you with some public speaking, stuff like that.
Right.
And then you're supposed to take that back to your salon and do a teach back.
Right.
And so that was like my first opportunity to even speak in front of people. And this even going way back, a lot of people don't know this about me, but I was a chronic stutterer when I was a kid.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, I probably haven't even told you that. I don't know.
I haven't heard you stutter one time.
No. Well, I pretty much think I'm over it now. But I mean, from first grade, I was in speech therapy because I stuttered all the time with almost everything that came out of my mouth. So
oh shit.
Yeah. So it was I learned ways to cope with it. I learned ways around it. It would really show up more when I was in a position of like, I was unsure of what I was saying,
right.
or I didn't know the answer to a question, or I was standing in front of people. I mean, all the way through high school, I stuttered. Yeah. So this was the first time, pretty much like after high school, that I had to get up in front of people and talk. But I think I was so comfortable talking about hair stuff that it never even crossed my mind. Like it didn't affect me. It didn't bother me because I was really comfortable talking about what I was talking about. So
passionate about it too.
Yeah, exactly. So that led into me doing haircutting training with all of our assistants at our salon. So we would do weekly classes, and I would go through a set of like 15 haircuts that I thought were really important for them to learn. Mm-hmm. And then there was another girl in the salon who took care of like the color side of things. So I was like the department head of cutting, and she was the department head of color. And so we would, try to raise up these assistants and give them that little extra education, which was really cool to be able to like be in a salon that offered education at that level every week, right? These assistants were getting cutting classes and color classes like every single Monday. Mm-hmm. And the salon supported me in that, right? Like those days that I was doing that, I was still getting paid to do that as well. So so not that I was doing it for the money, but when you're taking off time and things like that, it is really great to be able to have a salon, support you in furthering education for other people.
Well, and taken away from your clients, like you could obviously be making money that way.
Right. So ends up back to the girl with the dreadlocks and the pigtails. Finally. She had been married to someone else, and their relationship, they got married very young, and I think that maybe they were just a little too young to get married, and things didn't quite go as they wanted them to, or as planned, and I was actually friends. I was friends with both of them, but I was a bit closer to her as things sort of started to change for them, and yeah. So I actually, from that first day that I saw her, I never in my life thought that she would be into me whatsoever. Right? Like full on, like no way. Like I was always like stupid little Doug. Like she was always around for all my ridiculous stories and things that I did like prior to obviously being with her, and we were truly friends, right? Mm-hmm. Like she was probably the first girl that I really that I really dated, but prior to dating her, I never thought it would be possible, right? So I was always like 100% with her. Right. I always would tell her, the stupid stuff that I would get into, and I was always myself because I was never like trying to sleep with her, right? Because I didn't think that like that was possible, and then one day,
you slept with her.
Then one day it was possible. Yeah. Then one day it was possible, and I swear the first time she brought it up that we ever started talking about it, I thought she was like fucking with me. I thought it was like a joke just to see if I would say that I was into her so she could like make fun of me. Like
she could like laugh and fall off her chair.
Exactly. But I was pleasingly surprised that she wasn't joking. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal that we were gonna date or whatever. It was pretty much like from that day forward, I knew, that if we were gonna be together, it was gonna be like we're gonna be together. Like
Right.
we're not just dating. We're not just trying to see how this goes. Like this is gonna be us. We're gonna we're gonna get married. We're gonna have kids. Like that was my idea, you know. And she was into it. So we dated for a while. She was Hugo's daughter. So the owner was Hugo. And then the owner's wife, Tony Kim, she was also involved in the ownership. And then as like time went on, Stevie and I kind of, with Tony and with Hugo still involved in the picture, Stevie and I pretty much like took over, I guess you would say. Hugo was kind of, just OG, hairdresser, and he was in his like early 60s at the time, so he's pretty much like not behind the chair anymore.
Right.
He would come in on Saturdays, cut a couple ladies' hair that like wouldn't go to anybody else.
Right.
But that was pretty much it. And then like I guess any major decisions, obviously he was involved in, but like day to day in dealing with the staff, dealing with education, dealing with everybody that walked in the door, that was pretty much between Stevie and I.
Yeah.
So Stevie did all the marketing. She did all the accounting. She did all the daily stuff. Like she did pretty much everything. Right. If something needed to be designed for a shelf talker or a new poster or an ad or whatever, that was her jam.
Right.
She pretty much ran the business. So we that was what we did. We got married. Now it's been this past year was our 10-year anniversary. So
man.
we've been married for a while. We dated for a few years before that too. So it's been awesome. I mean, yeah, she's now the well, I guess we'll talk about that, how she got there in a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Well,
so that's when things were just kind of rolling along, right? Like I was a hairdresser. I was super busy. She ran the salon. That's what it was. We were married. We had a baby. Like, life was what it was, right? Life was good.
Right.
Yeah? And then, I was like tired of Facebook, and then I downloaded Instagram, and then there I am on Instagram scrolling through, and I've got like 20 followers and don't know anything about anything. And I started to notice that like, so our Hugo, the salon, we had an Instagram for the salon too, but we just weren't, it wasn't very active. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. We didn't know, we weren't on that tip yet. Like we weren't pushing Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So I remember one night, I'm like scrolling through my Instagram, and I looked at the salon Instagram, and I'm on the couch with my wife, and I made a comment that got me in trouble later, right? So I'm like, man, our Instagram page is weak, and she took it as like a personal fucking assault that like I called our Instagram page weak, and she was like, I'll fucking show you.
Yeah.
Right. So
did she sound like Clint Eastwood when she said it? Like you?
I mean,
did?
More of like a
Batman,
like a Latina. A Spanish Clint Eastwood. I don't remember how she sounded, but she was fucking mad. That I like called out that our page was weak. I mean, at that time I had already had. I mean, I don't know how many followers I had, but I already had more than the salon. Right. Which to her was like crazy. You know, like we should be growing our business, not growing our personal stuff, right? Because that's what we were. We were really just the business. Yeah.
Hugo Salon.
Yeah. So she gets on there, and because of like her mindset and the way she does things, she's pretty much always figures out like the best way to make things happen, make things work. She's just very, very smart. She really works her way around everything. Like she doesn't like to be told what she can and can't do. Especially if she doesn't think it's logical, right? So it's really helped her grow into the role that she has now, right? Because of what she's doing. So she then makes it her her personal goal to grow our Instagram page. And so I'm growing my page, she's growing that page, the salon's starting to get involved more. We're making people take pictures, right? If somebody walks out and their hair looks great, we're like, hey, did you take a picture of that?
Right.
And, and often at that time, it's hard to force people into doing that, right? And people are like, oh, no, I didn't take the picture. And we're like, come on, we're going upstairs. We had this photo wall, and Hugo is a fantastic photographer. And so we were able to use his equipment and cameras and stuff like that. So we were taking some really, really fantastic pictures.
Right.
From
before all the filters and the depth and all that shit on the phone.
Yeah. There was no portrait mode back then. Yeah. So Stevie's taking pictures of everybody. She's posting it, and as time goes on, then we start seeing, these hairdressers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We start seeing Butterfly Loft, and we see what's going on, and you could just tell, right? Like. What was the show that I met you at? The one Miami. Yeah, front row.
Front row.
Right? So we saw butterfly circuses happening.
Yeah.
Okay? And we see, these big Instagram names like J. Wesley Olson and Be Seen and Hair Godzito and Glam Iris and Exo Stylist and Confessions of a Hairstylist and all the Alexis Butterfly Loft. We're seeing these names and all these people, they were already successful on their social media, right? And we were still like really trying to be successful. So we see all these people and we're like, wow, this seems like something new, something different, right? Because we came from a very classic world of hairdressing, Sassoon and Wella and
that's it.
That was what I knew.
Yeah.
And, so this was a completely different style of education.
Right.
And I was like, I gotta see this. I gotta see what these people are doing. I gotta watch J. Wesley Olson balayage. Like, I gotta figure out like what he's doing different than everybody else, right? And that was it right there. That even if it was one person of the group that you had to go see,
right,
you would show up at this thing and you see all these different people, right? And I mean, pay tribute to David and Alexis. Obviously, they've been a massive part of where I am and who I am today. Mm-hmm. But the inception of that platform, I think, was what got me really interested in like what was going on, right? Because it was like you could see all the best hairdressers, from Instagram. You could see all the best at the same time, and it was so intriguing. So I missed the LA show because it just wasn't quite there. And then I think New York was after that. We didn't go to New York, but in that I remember you and I had some sort of just brief little talks here and there.
Yeah.
Hey, bro, I like your work.
Yeah.
Hey, I love this one. Yeah. We were liking each other's things. You followed me one day. It was very very minimal, right? And I think obviously at that time, like, and I've said this before, like there's not a whole lot of good dudes in the industry. Maybe now I feel like I've met a lot more.
Yeah.
A lot more guys that are good dudes. I think there are more of them out there now. But in the time of you and I growing up through the industry, I feel like the male role models in the industry, not all of them were the best, right? They just
unsavory.
Yeah, they just weren't the best dudes. And I can't necessarily full on describe it, but if we were out somewhere and I said one like that and I'd point, you would absolutely know exactly the type of hairdresser I was talking about, right?
Dude, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually like to think, and like not to like toot our horns, but I honestly, genuinely feel that we have inspired other young men to be okay with being a good dude and like having a family and like portraying that on social media and being open about celebrating their wife and their kids and all that shit, because it was frowned upon. I mean, even ex-business partners of mine were like, "What the fuck? Like, why do you keep posting your wife? Like, you need to do selfies." And I was like, "Oh, thanks," but it was there was an era where like you almost had to portray yourself as your business and then like somewhat single. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sex appeal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like you and I are one of the one of the elements that really helped young men and even women too. Like whether we were small or large, depending on the person, they were able to feel.
You're large.
I'm large and small.
I'm small.
but they were able to be themselves and celebrate their family and shit like that.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think that a lot of that had to do with the original, just like, me noticing you, you noticing me, right? That we had similar outlooks on what it means to be, a good husband, a good dad, and then be a mentor to people in the industry, right?
Here we are.
Cool.
Back from break.
Yeah.
I think it's important to. Well, we're going to lead into this, but we got a show here tonight in Arizona.
Yes.
So I was super proud to have you here in Arizona, and actually, I'll go into it really quick. Like, super proud to go to Australia with you just recently, because that was so fucking cool for me, because I remember sitting with you talking about this when Pulp Riot first started, like, kind of arriving on the scene, and we talked about taking the color line overseas and doing that shit. That was kind of like a bucket list dream for us. And you, right out of the fucking gate, went and did that. I had a little fat baby boy.
Yeah.
And it was nice to finally, like, come back to that. What was that, 3 years? So 3 years later? Yeah. We got to go and do that together.
Yeah, well, and I just love the fact that your first, like, international trip was with me. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was cool that we got to obviously spend the time together, but then that was really the first time that you and I were, like, on a stage, just us working together.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we've been on stages before, but really truly, like, working as one to deliver a message, and I thought it was awesome. I mean, I thought it went really well.
I thought it went good too. I think it's the fluidity of best friendiness.
That could have something to do with it.
The fluidity of best friendiness. And
yeah.
I remember one time I was listening to you talk about us to someone, and I kind of, and you actually said this. You said we finish each other's, and then both of us said sandwiches.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the moment that I knew when our eyes met.
There's a video of that somewhere. We actually caught that on video.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
So we left off at the social media, the kind of the uprising of social media, and, like, where you guys were at, and you and Stevie basically getting pissed at you, and was about to show you what she was going to do. Yeah.
And she definitely showed me, So our presence as a salon, like as HUGE Salon, and then myself as a hairdresser, started to grow a little bit, right? Like, we sort of other people started noticing us, or started noticing the salon, and then really what Stevie was doing through the marketing of the salon. Like, she really worked hard to make our Instagram look like it had, like, a aesthetic or a vibe at the time,
Right.
So I think that the salon page started to get noticed, and then again, like, bringing this, like, full circle, like, when I saw the lineup for the Butterfly Circus at Front Row down in Miami, you were on it, a bunch of other artists were on it. And it just seemed like the right time to go, right? And we lived in Maryland, so a quick flight down to Miami was super easy. We had my father-in-law had a place down there, so it was just, like, super easy for us to get there and sort of enjoy ourselves. And we did. So it was my wife, myself, and a couple of our stylists that worked there at the time. And I remember showing up at the hotel, right? So they had this whole, like, meet and greet for everybody that was going to come to, or had bought a ticket for Butterfly Circus. They could come to, hang out with the artists and have some drinks the evening before. And without a doubt, every single time a hair company sets something up like that, there is never enough bartenders, right?
They don't know.
Would you agree?
Every single time.
Every single time.
They had one bartender. I think there was probably, like, 400 people. Maybe there was a couple hundred people.
It was a lot of people.
One bartender.
Yeah, and so I'm at one end of the bar, trying to get my wife and myself a drink, and I noticed at the other end of the bar, Jay doing the same thing, trying to get himself and his wife, I'm sure, a drink. And so I'm thinking to myself, hey, there's Jay. I still hadn't met him yet. I'm like, I'm gonna buy him a beer too. So I'm like waiting for the bartender to come over, because I know it's been so long, nobody can get a drink. If I can get this bartender to get to me first, I can buy Jay a beer before he ever gets a beer, because there's no way it's gonna happen because there's one bartender. So I'm trying, and I see him at the other side of the bar, and he's trying, and to no success did we get a beer, right? Could not get a beer. So I ended up walking back over towards where my wife was sitting. His wife happened to be sitting right there as well. And the two of them easily got drinks, right? By the time we got over to them, we had then sort of like introduced each other to ourselves. And I remember I said, hey, Stevie, this is Jay. It's the guy I'm telling you about. And then you tapped Cindy and said the same thing. This is Doug. I've been talking to you about him. And the two of them looked at us like, where are our drinks? And we're like, well, I know you don't care about this moment that we're having, but we were not able to get drinks. So very quickly, the two of them turned, and I think we had drinks in about a minute after that.
I think their drinks actually, the single bartender amongst 300 people was like, "Can I get you guys drinks?"
Yeah.
Like looking over, and our wives were like, "Yes, we'll accept drinks now."
We are lucky men.
We have to get some for our husbands too.
Yeah.
And they're like,
sorry.
Yeah, that's fucking whatever.
So that was the first night that Jay and I actually met each other, right? And it was cool. You were just coming off of you had just gotten married, right? Yeah. Just gotten married, still down there for the show. And yeah, so it was very, very surreal to me, because we had just sort of like spoke through Instagram, like. Mm-hmm. Never a phone call or anything like that. Just like little stuff here and there, and then the next day we're at the show. I don't know if you remember this, but I'm sitting there with Stevie and the two other girls, Samantha and Athanasia, and the four of us are sitting there. And you come on stage and you start talking about your balayage and stuff like that, and you see us, and you said, "What's up, HUGE Salon?" And you gave us a shout out on stage, basically in front of everybody. Yeah. And we were all like, giddy, like, Jay said HUGE Salon. So we're all like loving that. It was so great. And then, yeah, I never forget, like, one of the things you taught in that class. You were talking about, don't hide it with the curl. That was something you said back then, and it like hit me. It just hit home with me, because like I kind of am a classically trained hairdresser, so like. If you're not like putting in the work to make it look right, and you have to hide it with a curl, like don't do that. Don't hide it with a curl. And I never forgot that. That was what I took home from that from that was put that little extra time in on your balayage, right? Make the blend right, do it the right way, and don't hide it with a curl. And like that was what you left me with that night.
I mean, that was the time period though where everybody was hiding fucking everything with a curl. Yeah. It still happens, but yeah. So yeah, it was like that was like my mantra at the time. Don't do it so well you don't have to hide it with a curl.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, right? It really does. Mm-hmm. So from there, as far as like my story goes, I came. Then again, we saw. Oh, that was when we really got to hang out. Was in Dallas, remember? Yeah. So the lineup for the Dallas Butterfly Circus came up, and they offered the same thing, like come hang out the night before. Yeah. And Jay was going to be there, and bringing it way back to Bumble and Bumble, where I first got that inspiration to educate. Mm-hmm. Howard McLaren was going to be there. Yeah. Which this was one of the cool things that I think David did at some of these shows, was that he had the Instagram hairdressers that were educating, but then he'd throw on someone like Robert Cromians. Yeah. He'd throw on someone like Howard McLaren to like hit the old school or the older generation as well, which I thought was like really cool. So I'm like, dude, I'm talking to Stevie, like we gotta go to this show. So we buy tickets, and then we hear that they're going to do the little event the night before. So we actually changed our flight, because I'm like, it's so important that we get there. This is the chance, right? The next day, you're not going to have time to hang out. You're not going to have time to talk. It's after the show. But that night before, maybe things will be better, right? Yeah. So we get there the night before. We basically landed and went straight to the bar. And I actually got to hang out with Howard McLaren, which to me was like, like hanging out, if I had got to hang out with, like someone like Sassoon, in my opinion, in what I had gained from Howard and his platform, right? So then that was also the night that David asked me if I wanted to be a part of the Washington, D.C. lab.
Right.
Yeah? Because they were doing a butterfly circus in D.C. So I remember talking to you about that later on that next night, or that night, the night after the show. Remember
Right.
we hung out at that bar downstairs,
Yeah.
and there was all those guys that were like wrestlers.
Yeah.
There was like a WrestleMania event happening.
Snoop Dogg was there too.
Yeah.
So Snoop Dogg, like
Yeah.
a fucking Ultimate Warrior, like it was a very
Yeah.
eclectic group.
It was, and everybody thought Jay was one of the wrestlers.
Right.
Not one of the hairdressers. So, and it was so funny. I remember we all, I get down there with my wife. You had finished up the show, and we were like ordered some food or whatever, and a couple other people were sitting there ordered food. Jay came down, and he's like looking around. Everybody had kind of already had their food. So Jay orders his drink. Nobody's eating the rest of the food on the table, and you just started like going after like you ordered no food, but yet ate more than everybody. It was like very strategically planned by you. So.
I mean, it's the way I do it at my house.
Yeah.
Because like if I order dinner, I'm eating my dinner, and then I'm eating all the kids' dinners. I'm eating a little bit of Cindy's dinner. Like it is very strategic. Plus, I'm thrifty when it comes to money. So,
yeah. And you're also watching your figure most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as I can, and then I just fucking eat everybody's food. So I've taken on the garbage disposal role, and I mean, who knows how much money I've saved, but I mean, it's delicious because it's kind of like a buffet every night. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from that, I got to. I remember, maybe it was even before the show that you and I had. So I'm working at the salon on a Saturday, super busy, crazy booked. I used to work on the half an hour. I was like, everything was 30 minutes. And I'm already starting my, 12 o'clock client 10 minutes late because she got shampooed and blah, blah, blah. I get a phone call from Jay because I had texted him and be like, hey, buddy, I got something I want to ask you about. And I wanted to ask him about how he felt about me getting into teaching some classes with a certain, certain group of people. And I just wanted some guidance, because he already had some information on the industry. He was obviously already out there teaching classes and doing this thing. So he called me back, and it was like the worst time, but I wasn't, it was Jay, I'm going to answer. So I get on the phone. I remember walking back to my color room, and we had like a 15-minute conversation about, what just pretty much what his opinion was. And a lot of it just really boiled down to, there could be a lot more coming for you in the future. So this, getting your feet wet, doing some education now would be a really great way for you to start, basically, and find out a little bit more about the industry and independent education and stuff like that. So Jay really helped guide me into teaching, right? If it wasn't for him, sort of telling me like, yeah, you should go for it. I don't know necessarily like when that path would have started for me as far as like teaching teaching other hairdressers that weren't hairdressers that worked in my salon, so. And then I was a good, half an hour late on that client, and had to trust everyone around me, right, to help catch me up for the rest of the day.
Back-to-back conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's one of the. I always knew the way that you guys did your thing. It was easy to see that just like foot on the gas pedal at all times.
Yeah.
And not necessarily. I mean, you could probably answer that better, but I don't know that you guys had like necessarily a goal in mind other than like being a part of something and just like fucking like forcing your way into it and doing whatever possible to be a part of it. And then that's when being a part of the beginning of something like that, opportunities can't not hit you, Yeah,
I mean, I would totally say there was no goal. Like if I had just done some education and still had my involvement in the salon and still, lived where I used to live, like my life would be great, right? Like, and I would have been very content with that. But the path of things escalated really quickly, right? Because off of Butterfly Circus, Pulp Riot was basically born. That's where it sort of launched. I think that's where the ideas for creating Pulp Riot really started to happen, right? Yeah. Because I think Dave and Alexis really saw room for something new and something fresh and something inspiring, right? And that's exactly what Pulp Riot is and was, right? I mean, it was something totally different. Just like Butterfly Circus was totally different, the inception of Pulp Riot was a totally different idea, which was really cool.
Well, and lo and behold, that's David and Alexis were literally like, without anybody knowing it, holding auditions.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
right. I had no idea.
I had no idea. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing either.
Yeah.
I just liked it. It was cool, and I liked the people that I was around.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great tip is to always be mindful as to who you're hanging around and like who you're associating yourself with and being a part of is are they all moving forward? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's great when it comes to even just like thinking about people in your salon. You know, if you've got employees or people that work with you, if they're against you or they're negative or they're not moving forward, 9 times out of 10, those people are going to sort of like weed themselves out anyways, right? So latch on to the people that are like-minded and the people that see things, you know, in a positive way, right? And I think that goes for like even when Pulp Riot started. You know, there's people that have been there. There's people that are here now that have been there since then, and those are the people that have had the right attitude, the right mindset, you know, just the right type of people from day one, right? Yeah. So,
I mean, so here you are. You go to Miami, you go to Dallas. And then there was a jam in Maryland that happened, and then I mean, what happens in between there to where like all of a sudden, I mean, it's been like 2 years. And
yeah.
You're now the creative director. Like
yeah.
you guys literally uprooted your lives, moved to LA.
Yeah.
And like how. Tell me about that time period as to like where you and your wife are at and what's going on with you guys.
Well, so not only in like meeting you in Dallas, I mean meeting you in Miami and then seeing you in Dallas, the same thing was happening like with my wife and I and with David and Alexis. So, you know, if you take David and Alexis's story and then mine and Stevie's story of like how we got together, and how we, you know, one of us is a hairdresser, one of us is in control of the business, you know, married before and then finding each other through friendship. They were, you know, jokingly, Alexis was like, they're our East Coast doppelgangers, you know, like our story was similar to theirs, you know, so they started to just take notice of what Stevie was doing through our social media, right? And Stevie like very intelligently was creating a lot for us. I think at the time that was really different than anybody else was.
I remember this now.
Was doing. Do you remember she made a picture that we all posted with the circus thing?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
She basically she recorded one of the labs. Like she.
Yeah.
And I
right.
remember I was like, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "Well, they just asked me to like capture some of that."
Exactly. So like, at that night we were hanging out in Dallas, David asked me to be a part of the jam, but then he also asked Stevie if she could because she was already doing all these videos for us at the salon.
Right.
He said, "I've got 16 hairdressers there. I want to create a video for each one of them, like a before and after, right?" And so she brought her camera and all her stuff, and she shot that day, right? And made a separate video for each one of the hairdressers that was involved, and that was the first time that David had sort of released control of something marketing wise, right? David had already had always recorded everything and videoed everything. That was his jam, right? Yeah. So he let Stevie sort of do that, and with a fantastic result. I mean, that video still holds up. Like if you go back and watch that video today, it was really cool, right? So we sort of become friends with David and Alexis as well, and they invited us one weekend to go take a little trip with them. They actually invited you and Cindy as well, but for whatever reason you guys couldn't make it. And then there was another couple there named the Wheelers, Lo and Jason Wheeler, amazing people.
I remember that. Man.
Absolutely love them, and Lo kind of comes into this story a little bit, which is pretty cool. So we're all hanging out one night playing Taboo or something like that, and David's had Stevie doing some work from not only that lab, but then after that, she was kind of like a private contractor. So she was creating content for Pulp Riot at the time.
Right.
If they needed an image for something, or if they needed a sign or something like that, she was sort of doing that, sort of creating content for Pulp before anybody else was. So we all go to this thing, and David says to Stevie, so, we're going to need someone to be the director or be the marketing. What do you call it? Director of marketing?
Yeah, director of marketing.
Yeah. So we're going to need someone to handle marketing, basically. And we need to hire somebody because we don't have anyone right now. At the time, it was only David and Alexis and Tyler's, 3 people that were sort of doing everything, right? So David's like, we need to hire somebody, but we'd much rather you move out to California and be the VP of marketing. That's what it is.
Right.
We'd much rather you come out and be that person, right? So they offered her that job. Then they offered me a chair at Butterfly Loft. So they put that on the table, basically. And like I said, Stevie and I had a great life. We had our salon, we had
Everything
our kids.
nice and cozy.
Everything was chill, you know. And that was what Stevie said. She was like, man, it sounds nice, but like, everything's good. Like, everything's good with us. Our house is good. Our kids are good. Our salon's good. Everything's good. And then we're sort of sitting there, and then Lo chimes in, and she says, but Stevie, that's really nice that everything's good, but what if everything could be great? Mm-hmm. And that idea to Stevie, this inception of this idea to move out to LA, to change our lives and to do something different was irreversible. Like, we had conversations about it, we talked about it, we this, we that, we were up and down here and there, but there was never a time, I don't think, that she had any doubt that we were going to move. Right. From the second she thought it. So very shortly after that, I'd say like 6 months later after that, we had spent some time out there. We flew out there and for a couple weeks here and there just to kind of like get our feet wet and see where we wanted to be. And and Stevie worked, and I started getting some clients at Butterfly Loft. But yeah, it was quick. We packed our things up and moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. My daughter started kindergarten when we moved there. My son started high school when we moved there. So yeah, it's been a huge transition. But it's been amazing. I mean, so obviously so now we've moved to LA. Stevie's the VP of marketing, so she's doing everything that has to do with marketing. She actually really does a lot. I would say that everyone that works at those higher levels in Pulp Riot, they wear a lot of hats. Yeah. Like, everybody does a lot of different things, which is really, really amazing. Yeah. And we're to the point now where, like, all of our marketing's in-house. Everything we shoot is done by people that work for Pulp Riot, which is really incredible. We don't outsource to anybody for anything, which is I'm pretty sure there's not another color line out there that could say that. So everything's going fantastic. I was just working at the salon, right? I mean, to be honest with you, at that point, I had to take a step back, right? Because I had been doing hair for 17 years. I had built this massive clientele. I was like the man at my salon, right? And then I moved to Butterfly Loft, and everybody was nice to me. It's not like anyone was mean or anything, but I didn't mean anything to anybody there. Right. I was just some guy from the East Coast that does stuff with Pulp Riot, and now here I am getting a chair at Butterfly, right? So
17 years, you essentially start over.
Basically, yeah. I mean, Alexis was fantastic in pushing a lot of her clients to me to help me get started. Like, absolutely no doubt. Like, if it wasn't for Alexis and her clients kind of like, being something that I could like rely on in the beginning, it would have been even more difficult, right? So I slowly started growing and getting new clients and stuff like that. But I was definitely wanting more, right? Because at that point I was just different. It was a different way of doing hair, because before your clients grow up with you, right? Yeah. Like, I had so many clients that were so mad at me when I left. I felt like I was breaking up with a long-term girlfriend every single day, over and over and over, because some of these women had I've been doing their hair since they were in college.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was in my early 20s when I started. They were teenagers. Now they're, you know, married and kids and you know, death and life and all the stuff that you go through with these people. You really gain like a huge connection with them.
Yeah, it's a
right?
relationship.
And then at almost 40 years old, starting over with new clients, new stories, new kids, new life, it was tough to gain the same amount of like I don't know, joy almost, right?
Yeah.
Like I was trying to prove myself like over and over and over again every day, which before I had proved myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had done that, you know, and now I'm trying to do it again with people that don't trust me with their hair. They don't want to hear what I have to say. They want to tell me what they want, which is fine. You know, obviously clients tell you what they want, but I had lost something. There was something missing, right? So when Faction 8 came out really is where I think things really changed, right? Because I came from that OG colorist perspective.
Right.
So when speaking about our permanent color line, I felt at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
I felt really comfortable. I felt like I was really good at it. And
Found a place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I also love cutting hair, so I think that in the beginning of Pulp, because I was sort of focused on that, I got a lot of great opportunities. You know, I was able to really share my knowledge about cutting hair and things like that on our stages.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me grow, I guess, socially, right?
Yeah.
Like people knew who I was because, oh, that's the guy that does this or does that or does razor cuts or
Does everything.
Sure, yeah, does everything.
For real though, it's like the most perfect utility savior, because like it wasn't, no matter what it was, you could do it. Cut hair, like precision cutting, you know what I mean? Like
I can balayage,
softer version
I
of
can
cutting.
color,
like,
I can do all of it.
Yeah, and it couldn't have been any other way, because that's what from my observation, that's what Pulp Riot needed. I mean, you talk about wearing a hat, like wearing lots of hats. Like I don't even think that like a lot of the members of Pulp Riot shouldn't even have a label as far as like what their situation is with the company, because everybody does so much. But you along with, you know, creating your own opportunities and just being the go-to in all facets of the company, but you also like gave a lot of opportunity to, you know, some of our larger educators now. Yeah, you know,
there's some people in like the top of our education team that like blow me away, and the way that they look at me sometimes, I think blows me away. Like I feel so humbled and honored to be able to be a part of some of our educators' lives or careers or any of those things. You know, the way that you were able to help me with an opportunity that I can help other artists now with similar opportunities, it's a really special thing. Yeah. Like it really does. It means a lot to me when anybody thanks me for anything. Yeah. You know, because I feel like a lot of times I'm just kind of like along for the ride and doing the best I can whenever I can, and being as honest as I can in the industry. I think that goes a long way. You know, just don't, you know, I don't bullshit about any of it. I tell people what I think about them and try to help them grow if that's what they need, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it's just been it's been crazy to grow into this position, I guess, right? So off of Faction 8 coming out, you know, we had tried a couple different directors of education over the years. Both wonderful at things that they were really good at, but not necessarily the right type of person to inspire the type of hairdressers that we have, right?
Yeah. And it needed to be a homegrown scenario, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that millennials need respect. They need guidance, right? And when you respect them and guide them, I think that you can bring out the absolute best in them, right? If you try to like shut these younger hairdressers down or tell them that they're doing something fucking wrong, like that's like not the right way to go about it, right? You got like, honestly, I don't even want to say millennials. I just say anybody in the industry that's trying to grow, that's putting themselves out there, that's showing up at a hair show, that's there to help, that's willing to go on stage, all of these people need to be treated in a certain way. And I think that I really saw that, you know, like, and that's how I treated people anyway, right? Like without a role, without a job, without a position, I always try to like lead by example. You know, I think you did that as well. Like I know that in the beginning, anytime we had anything, any sort of pep talk or positive thing or getting the group together, that was always you. You know, Jay always did that. And I loved it. You know, it created an atmosphere, right? And then as time went on, when you weren't able, you know, you didn't go to every show, obviously. Right. And if I was at a show that you weren't at, I was the one that was able to step in and sort of be Jay, right? And that's what we said. They're like, okay, Doug's gonna be Jay. Doug's gonna be Jay. So then I would, you know, just use you as my example and try to do you honor in how I spoke to the team, right? And so I think that it just trickles down from there, right? It transcends, as they say.
I like that word.
Yeah,
that's a good word.
Yeah. So here we are today. Like this show is it's gonna be pretty awesome. I think this will be the first time so we're talking about wearing hats. This will be the first time that I'm gonna sort of moderate a full Pulp Riot show. So I'm really excited. I get to kick it with you up there. So hopefully we won't be silly geese, as they say.
Dude, you know, as I mean, a
little bit.
Silly geese may sneak in.
We get a little silly.
The barn door's open.
Yeah,
let's be honest. But I mean, I think we did kick ass at like managing our silly geesiness.
Yes.
And getting, you know, still preaching the gospel of what we're doing.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I mean, it's fucking awesome, man. I'm super proud for you. You know, you've now been a huge part and played a huge role in taking Pulp Riot worldwide, and it just continues to dominate. And you know, a lot of that is because of you and your wife, and it's been cool to watch. I really like being your best friend.
Yeah.
So
couldn't ask for another.
So I'm excited to see what's next, man.
Yeah.
I love you, bro.
You too, man. Jay, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, man.
Really good time.
Next time we need more time.
Yeah.
And a couple beers.
Yeah, I don't really think I've fully told that story. So hopefully
it's on tape now.
Hopefully it goes in the right direction.
Awesome, man.
All right, bro. Thanks, man.
Of course.